So you know my man Doc, right? Doc came for me, and basically I got a voicemail. I'm gonna see if I can play it so you can hear it. All right.
Yo, yeah, you gotta call me back because the disrespect is just unbelievable. The distance between Steve Nash and Mark Jackson is not as wide as you think. I mean, it's wide, but it ain't as wide as you think. I definitely would rank Steve Nash higher than Mark Jackson, but not by much. Maybe about 1 to 6.
Did you hear that?
What he said he would rate Steve Nash and Mark Jackson close to each other?
Yeah, he said closer than he was saying the gap isn't as far as many people think between those two players. And it was funny because I got a text message, right? So I dropped he listened to the podcast on Monday. Then I dropped the snippet, in the evening. And that evening I got a text. And on that text was a screenshot of the NBA assist leaders. All right. So, you know where Steve Nash ranks all time in assists?
Third. Wasn't he like third or something?
He's third in the NBA
in all time,
assists.
Right.
All time. 10,335 assists. Where do you think Mark Jackson ranks?
I don't know where Mark rank at in there.
This was an oversight by me too. Mark Jackson, number 4 all time. You remember how many assists I said Steve had?
Go ahead. Say it again.
10,335. That's the number 3 guy.
Right.
The number 4 guy, 10,334.
You know what? That's news to me because I wouldn't never put them, or like what Doc was saying, I would never put them that close. I could never do that. But we know Mark Jackson was a study player.
Yeah, and that's what Doc was saying. He was like, because I was like, all right, Doc. And he admitted to this too. I was like, I guarantee Mark wasn't scoring the ball like Steve. But I mean, Steve also had, that electrifying game. But then, Doc took me back a little bit. He was like, listen, Mark Jackson, as a lot of you gentlemen like to say, had that pizzazz back in the day. So I got to lean on you. I'll let you speak a little bit about Mark's game.
No, I mean, I think Mark was, you know what? Mark would be, like, I would say that he was one of the good point guards. Like you would say Maurice Cheeks and Isaiah. You would put because you look at what difference they play in their game is like kind of different. And like you would say some of that, what you just said with Steve Nash could score. Steve Nash could do that. That wasn't Mark Jackson game. Wasn't ever Mark Jackson game as long as I knew him. But Mark Jackson ran the New York Knicks. He ran them. He was like a key, like running them. But like I would never think that they was that close. And then when you say that, but like I know Mark Jackson was a good guard. Like like some people would say you wouldn't put Isaiah and Mo Cheeks right there, but even Isaiah would say how good Maurice Cheeks was.
So I tend to defer to the old heads to get that insight. But I just thought it was interesting. So when you're talking about coaching opportunities, it made me kind of shift my lens a little bit. And, before I was thinking about Steve Nash getting the job for the Nets as, I was pointing to his relationships a lot, right? But I think one area where I fell short is that, part of forming relationships is access, right? Access to different rooms, right? And it takes a certain level of privilege sometimes to be able to access certain rooms. So I was talking to someone who's pretty close with Bob McAdoo's kids. You familiar with Bob McAdoo?
Definitely.
Yeah. So, and it was funny because that name is a name that I hear watching a lot of games, right? Like Bob McAdoo coached close to 20 seasons in the NBA. He won 2 or 3 championships while being on the Heat coaching staff. He was NBA Rookie of the Year, MVP in '75. He's a Hall of Famer. Got a couple championships with the Lakers. So he's that dude, right? Like, he could play. No question about it. Check his resume.
I watched Bob McAdoo play. That's what I'm talking about. Bob McAdoo with the Buffalo back then, who used to kill Philadelphia. Bob McAdoo was, you know what? He was like one of the shorter centers, but he could shoot, man.
So when we're talking about, so I mentioned that he coached like 20 years, right? All right, and this is a guy who wanted to be a head coach, right? He had head coach aspirations. Bob McAdoo never made the short list for coaching jobs. You know, and this is a guy who, check his resume, Hall of Famer, MVP, champion, Rookie of the Year, could flat out play, right? Like a Steve Nash, could flat out play. Hall of Famer, MVP, Steve Nash, no championship. Bob McAdoo never even made the short list to be considered for a head coaching job. So now, you know, you zoom out, right? Because, you know, going back to last week, I was like, what, you know, I want to see, you know, I said going forward, I want to see guys that, you know, black players that retire, that have similar resumes, you know, comparable resumes to Steve Nash that want to coach. I want to see, you know, how easy is it for them to get certain coaching jobs and what jobs they get, right? You know, finding an opportunity to coach Kyrie and KD, you know, NBA ready team, few and far between. But, you know, you got a guy, no experience, come in, fine. He could be perfect for the job, right? But, you know, being as though Bob McAdoo is out there, I know there's a lot of other Bob McAdoos that are, you know, assistant coaches in the NBA that want to be head coaches, great players, or, you know, even some that, you know, aren't coaching anymore. I know there's, you know, he's just one of many. So I'm recanting a bit on my statement, or I'm recanting on my statement and saying Steve Nash got that job because of white privilege. No question about it.
Okay. I question I gotta ask: did you know of Bob McAdoo wanting to be a head coach?
Yes, I got a source that's pretty close with his family. He had head coaching aspirations.
Oh, okay.
So
But I mean,
and he never
like
made
I
the
said,
short list on candidates. So he
like
never was really considered.
Well, you know what? Look at all the other, some of the black coaches that went through him. When you talk about Isaiah, when you talk about Magic and all them, and like he was coaching back then. And I forgot that, you know what? Really, I didn't even think about Bob McAdoo being assistant coach. And like I now do remember him being assistant coach. Like I said, I knew Bob McAdoo because when I was young and he was playing in the NBA. I mean, I was saying, yes, he could flat out play. But like I said, like, you know what, you could say, like I said, Steve Nash, we could say white privilege, you know, some and like some things, like you still go back who you know. Like you know, we could turn it to color, but we can always say that. But you know what, it's still who you know.
Yeah, but he's able to know people because of who he is. And part of that, like when you got people running these organizations that are a certain color, right? Sometimes they go with their guy and all that plays into the same thing. Like he's formulating those relationships because of the access that he has, which is because of his white privilege. And it's okay. It's not saying that, you know, he's actively oppressing anybody or blocking people. You know, he's just benefiting from this thing. You know, like you can make an argument that, you know, affirmative action, right? It helps make sure that black people have equal access and opportunities, right? Like when you're looking at colleges, right? So, you know, someone could say, oh, Kevin, you benefited from affirmative action to get into Penn, right? You can make that argument. But at the same time, I'm qualified to be there, right? I'm deserving. So both things can coexist. Steve Nash can benefit from his white privilege. And he also can possibly be the best candidate for the job. The two things can go hand in hand.
When you actually go there. So what about, how did Magic Johnson get the head coaching job of the Lakers?
Thanks so much for watching this video. To hear more from this conversation, check out the No Stopping Kev Show podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks. Much love.